All right, welcome back, family, to another episode of Rise Urban Nation, where we unite, uplift, and ignite the voices of Black and Pan African entrepreneurs who are rewriting the narrative of success. I'm your host, Taryell Simmons, and today's conversation is about something we don't talk about enough in our grind culture in our community: the power of pause. How do we, as ambitious, purpose driven people, balance success with our own well being? How do we keep pouring into others when our own cup is empty? Well, today's guest knows that struggle all too well. Sharon D. Brown, licensed clinical social worker, self. I don't even know how to pronounce this. This is the first time I've seen carepreneur. Did I say it
Yes,
right?
entrepreneur.
Like there's all types of entrepreneurs, but she's a self carepreneur and founder of the Self Care U Academy, is on a mission to help leaders, entrepreneurs, and change makers transform stress and burnout into energy, joy, and financial freedom. She calls it wellness as a workaholic strategy. Okay, I like that. We're going to have to unpack that later. And she's here to show us how hitting pause can actually help us perform our best. Welcome, Miss Brown.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's definitely a joy to be here. And just to pretty much tell a little bit more about myself when it comes to self care is something that I love, myself. And I do want to say too that, you know, we don't always like to say that we happenstance about something, but it is life
Mhm.
circumstances that brought me to the pause, that brought me to self care and more so of wellness, especially by being a therapist. I've seen a lot,
Mhm.
and then after or shall I say, while I experienced certain things, it pretty much, I'm going to say, led me more so into my purpose, even though I was already in
Mm.
the field. Sometimes you put it like this, not in realizing that those were the baby steps. I thought they were the steps. But those were the baby steps of where I am today.
Right. I love that. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation, honestly, because as I was talking to you in the green room, a lot of the folks in our community are running on fumes right now, including myself and other practitioners. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be going on a retreat here in about a couple weeks called the Sacred Pause. And this is going to be my introduction to like really taking those baby steps like you've done to get here and bring this to us. But before I jump into your journey, I want to tell people a little bit how we meet. We met through was it
Yeah, Ron
Ron?
Story Jr.
Ron Story. Shout out to Ron doing amazing things at Speaker Hub. How did you get in connected to Ron? Just out of curiosity.
Pretty much put it like this, it is one of his ways of how he does things is that he has a video. So he's out there on social media, and I came across the video, and I can't
Uh-huh.
remember. It wasn't the day that I saw the video, but sometimes some things stick with you because he does just have a personality. But it was a
Yeah.
video about LinkedIn. I said, "Oh yeah, I remember this guy was talking about something. Let me look him up because part of what I'm doing now is I want to reach as many individuals as I can, and Speaker Hub is a good way
Hmm.
of doing that. So that's really the main reason, or the main way, should I say, that I got connected with him or
Yeah.
wanting to spread the word. And Speaker Hub is a good way of getting your messages, whether it's on podcasts, associations, conferences, and things of that.
Yeah, I think I've had several guests from Speaker Hub on the show. So yeah, you just reminded me too. I haven't had Ron on since he's acquired Speaker Hub. I think I had him back on his old
Mhm.
business. I think it was Pitch DB. So I'm gonna have to hit him up, get him on, so we can start making those connections and then tell all of these listeners how to really get in tune to Speaker Hub. Now let's dive a little bit into your journey. So this may be my ignorance. I figured if you're a licensed therapist, you would know how to embed pause into your life and you would never have burnout. But that could be my ignorance, right? And so you being a licensed therapist, you're a wellness educator, and now the founder of Self Care U Academy. But I imagine the mission didn't start from a place of ease. What really led you to create Self Care U Academy?
Yeah, pretty much that was a journey in and of itself. The main thing, I'm going to say there are like three different parts, but the first one was really a breakup. And by me being a
Mm.
therapist, because I always say my story, I was crying for 40 days and 40 nights and nothing was working. Nothing.
You sound like a Tony
I
Braxton love
know.
song right there.
Nothing was working. And it's not just the fact that nothing was working. I was exercising, I did go to therapy, but it just, but even by being a therapist, something was missing. And
Mm.
at this time, I heard about yoga. Yoga wasn't a part of my life. I might have done yoga before in the past, like, this is not me. But I'm like, I need to slow my heart rate down to help me
Mhm.
with this. And so it led me to yoga. And then from there, I went to yoga teacher training because I wanted to learn more. And then there was something
Mhm.
about it, but also doing somewhere in that process of healing. Let's just say one night I was crying so hard, and I'm like, okay, I'm sick and tired of, crying like this, sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I really went what I call 7 layers deep. And this was more of
Mm.
meditation, more so than yoga itself, even though meditation is a part of yoga.
Yeah.
But with that, that really made me like, oh, wait a minute. I really wasn't connected with myself. You see what I'm
Mm.
saying? And then the other
Yeah.
part of it too, with my parents, medical mayhems, and just being in the field, because to your point, you're like, hey, you're a therapist. You should have pauses, but like you're an advocate. And so just think
Mhm.
about when you're an advocate, there are systems in the mental health
Mhm.
field. It's a system. So we're
Yeah.
there, especially when we're working for others, we have caseload, and then, we don't always have, um, especially for those who are not in private practice, if you're working for others, you never know who's going to come through the door. So just meaning that you're taking on other people distress. But the thing is, even
Mm.
though in our field, it's always like, oh, make sure you go to therapy, make sure you're taking care of yourself. But there's this other part when it comes to mental health that hadn't always been included. But I'm going to say it depends on where you are in the world too. So with that,
Mhm.
there's something, let's just say some people call it somatic or embodiment practices. If we do not include that, because you can have talk therapy all day long, there are a lot of people who's going to
Mhm.
do well with talk therapy. But
Yeah.
because stress and distress lives in the body, if we're not addressing that, then, that's not going to be. But to get back, not to really get back, but to make it
Yeah.
full circle, in that I had the personal experience in dealing with my parents and then involved in mental health in and of itself. I realized that
Mhm.
something was missing. And I'm like, you know what? People are always coming to us like after the fact, like after they're dealing with extreme anxiety or depression or after something happened. And what
Yeah.
I saw, especially at certain places that I work, because I did a lot of crisis work, in that, oh, we're not teaching people how to be well, you
Mm.
know? And so part of
Yeah.
this is how do we be well along the way? Because it's almost
Mhm.
like, when someone's losing weight and they do all of this stuff, change their eating habits and exercise. But then for some people, after they lose the weight, of course, you're going to decrease, but some people completely stop. But that's not how our being is made up. We got to feed it.
Yeah. And I think our current healthcare system is set up like that, where we we cure the symptom, or we well, not even cure the symptom. I would say we address the symptom, but we don't look at the entire the ecosystem or the system of that person's self to figure out what is the root problem and how do we teach this person how to be in alignment with the root of their system so that they can have holistic
Yeah.
wellness, if
Yeah.
that makes
Mhm.
sense. Um, uh, what was because I think some of it sometimes we don't know what we don't know because uh, I'm still in my journey. So um, I've often been that person where um, I am. I now realize I'm taking on other people's energies,
Mhm.
right? And helping them navigate situation, and I'm sitting with energies that are not my own
Mhm.
energies, and it's aligning with my energy systems and causing me to respond in such a
Mhm.
way. And I'm trying to figure out um, how do you realize when that's happening? How do you start to realize when self-care is optional and it's essential? Like I'm trying to think of what was that breaking point for you where you're like, aha, I see where I need to get back in tune to myself because I'm not in alignment with self. Like how does one start to do that? Because I think sometimes we get lost in the rut of
Mhm.
doing the thing, right? And society says you got to be this way to help people, da, 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 and then you get stuck in the cycle that you forget you in the
Yeah.
piece. And so how do you what's the what were those things that got you to realize that you need to center you, and then when you center you you'll be great for others or just be great general,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It was pretty much when I started pouring in myself, and I'm gonna say it was twofold. Part of it when I was pouring into myself, and the other part of it, even though I still had the mindset, oh, let me learn this so I can help others. Because even when it came to yoga, when I went to yoga teacher training, part of the mindset was, oh, this seems really good to help others. So let me learn this. But it was the experience in and of itself that ended up
Hmm.
helping me. The other thing I do want to make sure that I try and say it as loud and clear, because your question, it is such a phenomenal question. It's like, how can people know when they need to tap in? And how will they know? Probably more so, how do they know when they're tapping out? That's probably more
Hmm.
so.
Yeah.
But the thing is that when we are connected with ourselves, to allow self-care, and I define self-care pretty much is things in which to help you get to the next moment, because it's not the
Hmm.
luxury of self-care, what people think about. It's not the bubble baths and the massage and the chocolate cake. Sometimes it can be taking the pause. Sometimes it can be, okay,
Hmm.
I need to go take a walk. Sometimes it can be,
Hmm.
especially being business owners, you may need to pitch. You know what I'm saying? The things that come along with that, you may need to reach out with somebody. And what if you have some anxiety about that? What mindset or what steps that need to be done? Or even if you're having collaboration with someone, let's say someone isn't doing their part, and you need to have a discussion. So self care can also mean, okay, I need to have this conversation. So what do I need to do to prepare myself for the conversation?
Mm.
So it's those type of things. But the thing is to look at self-care as a lifestyle. It's something that you do for your well-being. So when you look at it from that way, then that way you can stay more connected, that you can kind of feel those other energies that don't belong. And then that's the main reason why you're pointing to yourself. And one example may
Yeah.
be, let's say, you know that you're going to an event. So you're going to an event, you're around different people, or you have a project, or you're advocating for something, and it's you know, it's a lot. You know what I'm saying? So in
Yeah.
saying that, you can prepare yourself before you go into that environment. And one of the things that I try to really emphasize with the clients that I work with is try and look at it as more so is that you're filling the bubble, but also when it comes to it's almost like a force field. You're ensuring
Mhm.
that your force field is filled, you know? Because a lot of times we end up just not doing anything, just like, do you need to tell your it's almost like somebody being on stage. You know what I'm saying? It's like if
Yeah.
you hear, certain musicians, they will tell you, oh yeah, before this, or even speakers, oh yeah, before I get on the stage, these are the things that I do. So it's the same thing,
Yeah.
when we're going in an environment so that you can take care of yourself.
Yeah. You make me think of the path that we even go down to get to this level of self-care because um even my journey there was a lot of pain, there's a lot of triumph, there's a lot of challenge, right? And once you get through that, you realize you needed that to get you to this
Mhm.
point. Because without it, you wouldn't had took the extra to really dissect the why you're going this, why you're feeling this way, and you don't want to, you want to change this,
Mhm.
right? I'm curious, how did your personal and professional distress kind of shape this path you're on today?
Yeah, like I said, when it came to there were three main things that led me, let's say, to Self Care U Academy, which is the breakup, my parents, medical mayhem, and in which when it came to my parents, I mean that had been going on like for years, pretty much like over time, and then especially when my stepdad had a heart attack because he,
Oh no.
was pretty much like a caregiver for my mom, and we all
Mhm.
played a part, but just meaning that he played a bigger part because they were married and they lived together. Um, and then when it came just being, just by being a therapist, just by working in the field, one of the things that people don't always talk about is just by being a therapist, the impact of hearing other people's stories of what it does. Like some people may
Mhm.
end up needing therapy because of countertransference, hearing somebody else's story and then what it
Mhm.
does to us. But what I have learned is that it's not just that, it's all kind of to your point, energetically, what it does to us. And I feel like that hadn't
Yeah.
always been addressed. And this is why we need some type of energy work and, some type of somatic or embodiment
Mhm.
work to help with that. And by me
Yeah.
observing, one, by me having my own experiences, and then seeking out different ways of how to help others, but it ended up helping me because, like I told you, when it came to the breakup, I purposely, intentionally went to yoga. But during the
Mm.
process, I learned so much, and especially once I got into yoga teacher training. And then the other thing that I did is I took Reiki training, that's energy healing. And I don't know if you're
Mm.
familiar with that. Pretty much, like for your
Yeah.
audience, the best way to describe it, if anybody's familiar with the original Karate Kid, when Daniel, had he injured his leg, and Mr. Miyagi, rubbed his hands together and went over. So energy work is very similar to that. And so I purposely went
Mm.
that, but even in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is another way to help. But that changed me. And to be honest, that changed me so much where it allowed me to say, oh, even though I'm in mental health and I'm helping others, but maybe that wasn't really my true purpose. So it allowed me to get
Mm,
closer to my purpose, but it also allowed me to see how to help people in a different way. Because with Reiki, they talk about the chakras were a different type of energy. And then at the time, I'm like, oh, maybe we're not helping people in the way that we think that we are, you know? So that made me at least be
mhm,
curious and to open the door a little bit more of different ways of helping people, or at least understanding people in a different way,
mhm,
especially energetically. Because to that point, I had never heard of any energy, you know what I'm saying? I never knew I
yeah,
never knew what it was. And the good thing is the person who had attuned me, she's a therapist herself. So I really like that
yeah,
as well. And then the other thing is, even though like we as therapists, we don't have to, but I did sought out life coaching, but and in that training, it made me even start questioning myself. It's like, what do I need healing from? Because before then, I never asked myself that, because when we're good, we're good. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? So there are three things that say, I would say that was distressors in my life, but then there were three things in which I did, whether it was intentionally or not, that also helped me to view um, wellness in a different way and to approach it in a different
mhm,
way. And so and then different places where I work, especially in working in crisis, when I see
mhm,
people and where a homeless person and executive can be at the same door, you would think they have so much, they're so different, but emotionally they're the same.
mhm, yeah. I love I love all of that because I love that one, going to the beginning, you were able to, like, take your pain and it became your kinda your
Mhm,
purpose, right? The other thing I'm thinking about as you were talking about this, when we 'cause the theme here is, taking that pause, and I'm thinking about how many professionals don't honor self-care in the workplace, and pausing could look like
mhm,
different things, especially when we're in this culture that doesn't often equate self-care with
mhm,
work. And you took three different approaches to it, like by seeing the life coach, doing the Reiki. These things allowed you to, um, in essence, have a
mhm,
pause, right? And then, um, start really implementing that pause further into your work, and not glorify the grind,
mhm,
of what some of these other practitioners do.
mhm,
And I think these are practical ways that people can do it, and start living that message so that they don't experience the burnout, that we often see. I want to dive into something that I saw on, I think it was, I don't know if it was on a different podcast or on your website. You said before, that you used to be a workaholic in
mhm.
recovery. Tell us about that period of your life. What was happening professionally and emotionally when you realized something had to change?
Yeah, just pretty much always showing up, and I'm glad we're talking about this because of the fact, how I was talking about the system. And it's not just the mental
Yeah.
health system, but any job, any corporate job. I mean, yes, they're needed and they do wonderful work. But even just by mental health, you would think, oh, you work in mental health, so they know you need to be debriefed after a crisis situation, or I need to, help someone to be admitted to the hospital. Or I've never been attacked, but let's just say someone, if a peer has been attacked, but just by witnessing it, of course, the peer, they will get their debrief, but they don't always have it set up where other workers, who's been exposed. So in seeing that, systems in and of itself do not always have a pause. Sometimes there's some places you can work
Mhm.
12 hours, but then if they don't have nobody else coming in, they really expect you to work those 12 hours. I get it, but at the same time, that's wear and tear on someone, not just the 12 hours in and itself, but when you're doing the type of work that we do, whether you're advocating
Mhm.
for someone or you're working in mental health, that's a lot, in and of itself.
Yeah, that is a lot. I'm curious, did like during that time, did you ever feel guilty or afraid to rest? Like taking a break would like make you fall behind?
No, it was just more so, I would say it almost felt like it was an obligation. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? It's kind of like, I love
Yeah.
what I do. I'm born for this. I always knew I wanted to, be a therapist. And so I'm going to say it's twofold. It's what I thought that's expected. It's like, oh, it's my duty. I've got to. I don't want to disappoint someone, or they need me. But then also, it's also how the system is set up.
Yeah.
Because sometimes
But this that system is run like a
yeah.
machine, and you know, you know. But here's what I would say to that, because I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Even though the systems from the healthcare system, education system, government systems, corporate, private, you know, every system. Let's take your phone for example. Your phone is
Mhm.
a system, right? And your phone is this computing system that has so much data and so forth that it could do
Mhm.
so much. But even that system needs to
Yeah.
recharge. Once it goes on E, you think it's going to do anything? No. So if a actual system, a machine needs to recharge, what makes you think your body doesn't need to
Yeah.
recharge?
Yeah. And that's a
You
really good
know.
example, because when you were saying that, I'm like, wow. And I think part of what happens, even though, like when it comes to work systems, let's say you have the CEO and then the vice and then management and supervisor and then the workers, but because there are different parts of the system, people don't always see the whole system because they're just playing the parts. So
Mm,
they can't see that the phone needs to be recharged. They just know the part that they play. You see what I'm saying? And so you have
yeah.
to be a person who can really look at the entire system, because sometimes if you remember that show, what is it? Undercover Boss. One thing that I
Yeah.
did like about that show, sometimes the bosses really didn't know like how much like they could have said something and how it impacts, the workers. And sometimes things can be misinterpreted, as
Mm,
well. But then they were able to see it, but without them going undercover, they really didn't see, the impact of what they had said. And sometimes I think that's what happens too. It's like each person have their own little parts, so they can't really see. It's like, oh no, we gotta, make sure you see, this many, clients, because if not, blah, 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 blah. But they're not realizing, oh, it's impacting, the providers, it's doing this, it's doing that. But then that's where the radical
mhm.
self-care come in, and that's where people kind of like going up against the system. It's just like, the system against these individuals. But one of the things, my aim is to be able to allow especially leaders and entrepreneurs to see both. It's like you need your rest, and to ensure, or at
Mm,
least your pause, and to ensure that others get theirs as well.
I love that. What's the biggest myth about self-care you had to unlearn?
That's a good question. I would say the biggest myth that I don't need permission from anyone to, pour into myself. It's kind of like,
Mhm,
even though And I can say this, like when it came to the medical mayhem that my parents were going through, because there were times in which, you know, um, my stepdad was in the hospital, my mom was in the hospital, they were in the hospital at the same time, and the back and forth over a period of time. And there's different levels of caregivers, because by the time that my stepdad had a heart attack, I was living out of town. So in saying that, even though there was family there, they did help, but we all played our part. But no matter what level that you are, it's still going to impact you, either impact you emotionally or going back and forth. So in saying that, that's where the radical acceptance come in, meaning that, and anyone who knows this, when it comes to their parents, they're going to do what they want to do no matter what.
I was just having this conversation with my siblings the other day.
And so,
We was like, we gotta go get mommy to do this and do that. Da, da, da. I was like, we could give all information, but at the end of the day, mommy gonna do what she's most comfortable
yeah.
with.
And so in saying that, even though some of the decisions that they're doing, the actions and the inactions may not be in their best interest, I gotta accept that. And so with the radical acceptance, it's a form of self-care, because meaning I have to let go that I have to do this for them. Yes, I set it up, but but again, allow them to say, okay, yes and no, and to be okay with that. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I think it's twofold. It's that radical acceptance, and then also you give them that radical agency
Yeah.
over their own um life outcomes. And it's a hard thing to do. It's a tug of pull. It's constant
It
work.
really is, but
So
yeah, I would say giving myself permission, to be okay with whatever that thing is.
yeah, that's deep. Thank you for sharing that. And I relate that to life and to entrepreneurship, because I think so many entrepreneurs, especially in the
Mhm,
Black community, carry like generational
mhm,
pressures, right, to keep it going, right, because of mom, dad, or because I'm the only one in the family, or I'm the first one in my family, or I got to make this work because there's no other way, right, and some of those pressures help make it hard for us to be in the space of radical acceptance and do all those things that we need to do to pause a step back that will allow us to be better, for ourselves and in our
mhm.
business. um and then next thing you know, you get on autopilot and
Oh, yeah.
you're just going through the motions of things, right, building, hustling, doing all the things, but quietly falling apart inside, and that's not what we
Mm-mm,
want. So I love that you spoke to that, and that's what it kind of triggered for
mhm,
me. I also love that you're bringing language to something so many people feel but can't name
mhm.
it. Now that you've been through it and built a system for healing, let's get into the tools. How do we actually make wellness part of our work?
Yeah. First of all, you make it by making a decision that you're going to have self care as a part of your work, your life, your being, because without it, we would not be, you know. Everybody look at sacrifices different, but the thing is, because
Hmm.
I really remember my mom, it's like, even when it came to her sickness, it's like she put in 30 years, at a company in which they did treat her well, overall. It's just that if you're working in a plant for over 30 years, not for everyone, but for a lot of individuals, though, they end up having, some health problems. But in saying
Hmm.
that and seeing what her and my stepdad have gone through, it's like we got to put more in our wellness. And
Yeah.
in saying that is to have a basic understanding of what stress is and what it does to the body. It's like, even with
Mm.
good stress, sometimes it's not good for the body either. So that's where the power of the
Man.
pause come in. And if you look at the power of the pause, it's to interrupt the nervous system. You know, you don't want it in that fight, freeze, you know, and when you're hustling and grinding, you're in that surviving mode. And one way of looking at it too, our being is always learning. It is
Yeah.
always learning. Is what we're doing intentionally and even what we're not doing. And so in saying that, it's making the decision that wellness, that self-care is who I am. And in order for me to show up, in order for the audience, in order for the leaders, in order for the entrepreneurs to be authentic and to have agency over themselves, is to be well. So making the
Yeah.
decision, and one part of that, I always like to say, take a breath. You can take 5
Man.
deep breaths, and that helps to reset your nervous system.
Mm. You hear that, Rise Urban Nation? Take a breath. Just 3 breaths can help reset your nervous
Yeah.
system and get you on that path to clarity. Now let's talk about Self-Care U
Mhm.
Academy. You turned your lived experience into a curriculum that's transforming lives. What's the philosophy behind your approach?
Yeah, pretty much the philosophy around the approach is more so is to take 5 to thrive. And pretty much when it comes to take 5 to thrive, it's like 5 steps for 5 minutes to 5 days. That's the basis of it. And with the 5 steps, even though I call it steps, but it's more you your being, but it's the different parts of you to a certain extent. So part of it is, taking deep breaths to remember throughout the day,
Mm.
sometime throughout the day, take 5 minutes to take some deep breaths just to breathe. And then
Yeah.
for some individuals, they're like, I don't want to focus just on the breath. I want to move. So that can be in walking, that can be in dancing, that could be doing some jumping jacks for some individuals.
Mhm.
But let's just say if you're sitting for an extended period of time, to get up and stand and do something, even if you just shake, you know. And then the other thing is to notice what's around you, to notice what's within you, just like, oh, what do I need in this moment? Is to take notice of that. And then the other one is to be present, because you're taking notice, but are you present in the moment? You know?
Mm.
And the last one is to be you, to be authentic. Because the other thing is, if we're constantly grinding, you may think you're you, but nah.
Mhm. You might be caught in somebody else's rhythm, patterns, system, and
Yeah,
ecosystem,
yeah.
and just responding and reacting instead of really.
Yeah, and so a
Um,
part of the Self Care U Academy, one thing that I've recently done is created a school, and it's called
mhm,
Fortitude and Free Circle. So that's for entrepreneurs and
mhm,
leaders to come inside the circle where we can practice some of those things, and if anything, to have, I kind of call it a incubator to be able to be in a community, because let's be real, most people, they don't do it. They forget to do it. And so we need reminders. We either
mhm.
need a coach or cheerleaders. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes we
Yeah,
need that little nudge. It's like, oh,
I think everybody needs a coach. Even Michael Jordan needed a coach at one point.
exactly. And then the other part of it, in which I'm expanding more now, is beginning to connect with organizations and corporations where we can take the pause and wellness, and to be, to have those reminders of to take care of ourselves, especially when it comes to leaders. because they're so busy of taking care of their team and their organizations, and sometimes they can be so burned out themselves, because it's so easy to get
Mhm.
caught up in the system. I mean, there's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with working for others, is needed as part of the entire ecosystem anyway, you know what I'm saying? But we don't want no one to
Mhm.
get lost. And so we all need those reminders and those and practices too. But that's the essence of
Yeah.
Self-Care U Academy, is to really to remind people and to bring people back to themselves. Because if not, we can be doing all of this. You can get lost in the world and be disconnected with your family. But what's worse is to be disconnected with yourself, because you start
Mm.
doing, and I think you mentioned autopilot, and we don't want that. We want you to be
Mm-mm.
whole. So, in order to be whole, we have to do holistic practices in order to remain connected.
Yeah, I was saying connected and present, as you mentioned earlier, because sometimes people are there, but they're not
Hmm.
present, and that's where they miss a lot of the opportunities that they could
Hmm.
have been getting to that next level of wholeness. One thing you also talked about, I think, was wealthy
Hmm.
habits, in some of your stuff. How do you connect financial freedom with wellness?
It is. I put it like this. I
Take your
might need to
time.
come back for that one. But on the short form, kind of just think about it. Like, even when I just think about my parents, you heard me mention medical mayhem. My parents, with my mom and my stepdad, they were definitely what I call financial comfortable. My mom, she
Mhm.
worked, 30 years, and she ended up having to go out on medical leave. And so once you end up going out on medical leave, the income isn't the same. But my stepdad, he was retired from the army, and he worked as a correctional officer. And I say, with the combination of all of that, they were pretty good financially. But then when they started having medical problems, but it was more so when the medical need was more than what the family could really be able to assist with. It's like when they needed outside assistance. Yeah, I'll put it like this, they either had services, whether it was paid by, the insurance company or the VA, for home health care or a home health assistance. But when it becomes beyond that, let's say for somebody, they can benefit from having 24-hour care, but they may not qualify for a nursing home. You see what I'm saying? So that's
Mhm.
where the wellness and your wealth can, you know, impact. And then
Mhm.
not only that, anybody, can have a heart attack or a stroke. And a lot of times we're not prepared for that. And then the other part of wellness, even though I talk about, the pause, but the power of the pause, but also the power of the pause is also like, what am I eating that is healthy for me? What exercise do I need to, do? Not always what you need to do within that 5 minutes, but to think about what do you need to do in your overall health. So your health, as they say, health is wealth, meaning when you're healthy,
Mhm.
yeah, but if
Yeah.
you're not, how can you prepare for that? And then not just in our health, but then financially, are we having those conversations,
Mhm.
about wills and trusts, about types of insurance policy, because the other thing
Yeah.
is, there is the I should know it, but I can't think of it at the moment. But I had to say there are insurance policies out there that can assist when
Mhm.
someone have, heart attacks and strokes. So long-term insurance, long-term care insurance policies.
Yeah.
And then also there are other types as well. But like, in order for us to be well, when our
Mhm.
finances is, not right, or medical conditions, can interfere with that, that puts on extra stress, you know, on the
Yeah.
individual
Yeah.
as well as their family too, especially, if someone is, married and have kids or just have children, it impacts them. So that's another reason to be well, so that you can have the open mind to make good decisions. Because if we're just grinding and stress, we're making decisions out of that, out of scarcity, out of grinding, instead of having that clarity, so that you can be
Woo.
well.
You don't gave him a whole lot. We might have to do another episode with you, because you breaking it down, sis. You really breaking it down for folks. But no, I agree with everything you said. That's just brilliant. And I think that's probably a whole nother
Yeah, yeah.
podcast conversation, really, to really go into deeply those impacts of how do you build health and wealth, by strategically making sure that you have those conversations to set those things up for the long haul. Wellness isn't just about bubble baths and meditations. It's about building
Yeah.
habits and putting structures in place that allow for that long-term wellness package as we get older, and protecting our energy and our economics. So I appreciate you bringing that into the
Yeah,
conversation.
you're so welcome.
Man, I'm over here struggling because I know we only got a couple minutes left, and there's so much I want to talk to you. We have to have you back a
Sounds
second
good,
time, because
sounds
it
good.
like because I knew we was gonna have a great engaging conversation, but this was really good, and I think more people need more of
Mhm.
it. But let's end off like this, and I want people to connect to where you are, where they can find you, but I also want to look back on everything you've overcome. And then as you close us out, give me what's the biggest lesson you learned, and in a short 1 minute
Mhm.
or less, and then tell people where they can
Yeah,
find you.
yeah. The biggest thing that I learned is to pour into myself, in the words that I say, in the things that I do, and to be able to do those things really unapologetically, you know what I'm saying? Is to be able to do them, without having to apologize or feel bad, and to be unbothered, by them. Because taking care of yourself, it shouldn't be something that someone needs to apologize for. So that's the biggest lesson. It's like, in order for me
Mhm.
to, serve others, I got to serve myself.
Yeah.
And the best way for people to, I would say, get in contact with me is LinkedIn. So Sharon D. Brown on LinkedIn, and they can DM me there. And then we can connect and go from there. Because I would definitely love for people to come into, the
Mhm.
Fortitude and Free Circle, and to find out more about that. Because it is about, communities, about taking care of yourself, and we need those reminders, because it's, because life be lifing, and it has a lot to do with, like,
Mhm.
how the mind works. And sometimes, we could be pulled in different ways, and we just may need somebody that's like, "Hey, and remember to breathe." you know
Yeah, just breathe now. Breathe. Let's pull you back in now. Take a
yeah,
breath. That breath work is important. Sharon, this conversation was powerful. Thank you so much for coming on today. You reminded us that rest isn't weakness; it's wisdom. And for everybody, if you're listening, go ahead and connect with Sharon. Go to her website, connect with her on all her socials. Check out the self care you community. I think it's a great community. I'm gonna be checking it out myself. Of course, when I get to the end of the episode, that's when I get all choked up, like I'm losing a friend, but I'm gaining
that's
one.
right.
um, Excuse me. All right, family, do yourself a favor. If this episode blessed you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe a workaholic friend who's forgot they're human too. Make sure you subscribe to Rise Urban Nation podcast. Leave us a review and stay tuned for next week's pod episode. We've got another trailblazer ready to drop some more gems of growth and purpose and wellness with you. Until next time, stay rising, stay rooted, and remember, you deserve to pause.